Hey everybody, welcome back. Reading the Federalist Papers. We are still continuing John Jay. We're on page 14. My last paper assigned several reasons why the safety of the people would be best secured by a union against the danger it may be exposed to by just cause of war given to other nations. And those reasons show that such cases would not only be more rarely given, but would also be more easily accommodated by a national government than either by the state governments or proposed little confederacies. Wow, I'm still blows my mind how much part of the Fed he fans over. But the safety of people of America against dangers from foreign force depends not only on their forbearing to give just cause of war to other nations, but also on their placing and continuing themselves in such a situation as not to invite hostility or insult. Look at that. So he's saying we should not invite hostility or insult, for it need not be observed that there are pretended as well as just causes for war. It is too true, however disgraceful it may be to human nature, that nations in general will make war whenever they have a prospect of getting anything by it. So profit. Nay, that absolute monarchs will often make war when their nations are to get nothing by it, but for purposes and objects merely personal, such as a thirst for military glory, revenge for personal affronts, ambition or private compacts to aggrandize or support their particular families or partisans. So some people go to war for personal glory or personal benefits and not necessarily for national benefits. Ain't that the truth? These and a variety of other motives which affect only the mind of the sovereign often lead him to engage in wars not sanctified by justice. Interesting. Wars not sanctified by justice, or the voice and interests of his people, but independent of these inducements to war, which are most prevalent in absolute monarchies, but which will deserve our attention, there are others which affect nations as often as kings, and some of them will, on examination, be found to grow out of our relative situation and circumstances. With France and Britain, we are rivals in the fisheries, and can supply their markets cheaper than they can themselves, notwithstanding any efforts to prevent it by bounties on their own or duties on foreign fish. With them, and with most other European nations, we are rivals in navigation and the carrying trade, and we shall deceive ourselves if we suppose that any of them will rejoice to see it flourish. For as our carrying trade cannot increase without in some degree diminishing theirs. Look at that. Our trade cannot increase without in some degree diminishing theirs. It is more their interest and will be more their policy to restrain than to promote it. In the trade to China and India, we interfere with more than one nation, inasmuch as it enables us to partake in advantages which they had in a manner monopolized, and as we thereby supply ourselves with commodities which we use to purchase from them. The extension of our own commerce and our own vessel cannot give pleasure to any nations who possess territories on or near this continent, because the cheapness and excellence of our productions, added to the circumstance of vicinity, and the enterprise and address of our merchants and navigators, will give us a great share in the advantages which those territories afford than consists with the wishes or policy of their respective sovereigns. China and India, even back then, had, as he contends, monopolized the market. So it tells you a lot about the history of China and India. Lots of exports. Spain thinks it convenient to shut the Mississippi against us on the one side, and Britain excludes us from the St. Lawrence on the other. Nor will either of them permit the other waters which are between them and us to become the means of mutual intercourse and traffic. So trade routes, even today, trade routes are very important. From these and such like considerations, which might, if consistent with prudence, be more amplified and detailed, it is easy to see that jealousies and uneasiness may gradually slide into the minds and cabinets of other nations. Jealousies and uneasiness getting into the cabinets of a competitor. And that we are not to expect that they should regard our advancements in union, in power and consequence by land and by sea, with an eye of indifference and composure. America at this time shouldn't expect that their rivals are going to just give a blind eye and take it with ease that their competitor is rising. They're actually going to be more angsty, he's contending. The people of America are aware that inducements to war may arise out of these circumstances, as well as from others not so obvious at present, and that whenever such inducements may find it fit time and opportunity for operation, pretenses to color and justify them will not be wanting. Look at that. Pretenses to color and justify them will not be wanting, so they'll be in the justification for it, and the beautifying of it will be abundantly clear and manifest. Wisely, therefore, do they consider union and a good national government as necessary to put and keep them in such a situation as, instead of inviting war, will tend to repress and discourage it. That situation consists in the best possible state of defense, and necessarily depends on the government, the arms, and the resources of the country, as the safety of the whole is the interest of the whole, and cannot be provided for without government. Look at that. He contends that there cannot be safety without government. Sounds like Thomas Hobbes. Either one or more or many, let us inquire whether one good government is not, relative to the object in question, more competent than any other given number whatever. One government can collect and avail itself of the talents and experience of the ablest men, in whatever part of the Union they may be found. It can move on uniform principles of policy. It can harmonize, assimilate, and protect the several parts and members, and extend the benefits of its foresight and precautions to each. In the formation of treaties, it will regard the interests of the whole, and, hopefully, and the particular interests of the parts as connected with that of the whole. Oh man. If only. It can apply the resources and power of the whole to the defense of any particular part, and that more easily and expeditiously than state governments or separate confederacies can possibly do, for want of concert and unity of system. It can place the militia under one plan of discipline, and by putting their officers in a proper line of subordination to the chief magistrate, will, in a manner, consolidate them into one corps, and thereby render them more efficient than if divided into 13 or into 3 or 4 distinct independent bodies. Look at that. So he wants the militias to be part of one body instead of having individual ones, so subject to one chief instead of individual corps. What would the militia of Britain be if the English militia obeyed the government of England, if the Scotch militia obeyed the government of Scotland, and if the Welsh militia obeyed the government of Wales? If this dude was alive today, he might be a globalist. Suppose an invasion with those 3 governments, if they agreed at all, be able, with all their respective forces, to operate against the enemy so effectually as a single government of Britain would. So he really contends that the more divided you are, the less efficient you are, remember? We have heard much of the fleets of Britain, and the time may come, if we are wise, when the fleets of America may engage attention. But if one national government had not so regulated the navigation of Britain as to make it a nursery for seamen, if one national government had not called forth all the national means and materials for forming fleets, their prowess and their thunder would not have been celebrated. Look at that. So the prowess and thunder wouldn't be as glorious if they didn't have national means and materials for organizing the logistics of making such a regulated navigation system. Interesting point.